listen to your kids.
Yeah.
Let them talk. Let them say whatever's on their mind. It might be the most ridiculous thing at times, but just let them talk. So we want to always have our kids listen to us. Like, so how many times have you said, hey, listen, I want you to listen, pay attention. Well, let's do that. The same for our children. Let's pay attention when they're talking. Let's let them have an open discussion and be comfortable to
hmm
talk to us.
Yeah, that's
Right?
powerful for sure.
I would
We
say that would be
forget they have a lot to say. Welcome to the Becoming Sound podcast, where we dive into the tough stuff and try to find the humor in the hot mess of being an adult child. Join me as we peel back the layers on growing up in dysfunction, navigating substance abuse, mental health challenges, and everything in between. Hi, everyone. Today, my guest is Patrick Callaghan, a certified life mastery consultant and a certified personal trainer. And as a certified transformational coach, Patrick specializes in helping individuals design and manifest lives in harmony with their soul's purpose. In addition to his transformational coaching, Patrick is a dedicated personal trainer with a focus on youth fitness. I love that. He introduces young individuals to a lifestyle of fitness and aiding in the higher performance of existing teen athletes. So welcome, Patrick.
Thank you for having me, Krista. I appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. So let's just dive in. Tell me a little bit about your story and your family dynamics growing up.
Yeah, so thanks for asking. So a little bit about my story. I grew up in the interior BC area, small town, and we grew up on a little bit of a farm. We had all our family, my grandpa, aunts and uncles that grew up on the same road, cousins and everything like that. And I grew up, some of the things that I mentioned to you is I grew up with a father who was an alcoholic.
Mm-hmm.
And it was tough. It was definitely tough. The thing is with alcoholism is I didn't know any different because when I was born, he was that way. And right to basically almost to about 5 years till he passed away, he was, or maybe not quite 5 years, about 10 years before he passed away, that he was an alcoholic. It was hard growing up. We didn't grow up with a lot of means. We grew up, you know, getting by and paycheck to paycheck and making ends meet and doing what we can. Had a big family. There was 5 other siblings that I had, two older siblings and 3 younger siblings.
So you're kind of
3
the middle
younger
guy.
sisters. Sorry, say that again.
You're the middle guy.
I'm the middle guy. Yeah,
Yeah.
a little. If you want a little side story, it's kind of interesting. Is my parents had 3 of us, and then there was a 9-year gap in
Oh,
between
wow.
the next 3, right? And
Yeah.
so
Oh, wow.
it was yeah, quite the dynamic family. So by the time I graduated high school and got out, I really didn't get to know my younger sisters very well because of the
Yeah.
age gap, right?
Yeah. When did you start realizing that something was different in your home? Like when did you kind of tune into that as a kid?
Probably when I came into high school, when I
Mm,
tuned into it. I never did many sleepovers, that kind of stuff. And when I got into high school, because we lived out of town a little bit, I'd start spending a few nights with other families, just, after basketball practice or, a night out to hang with your buddies. And then when I started to see that, oh, hey, wait a minute, this isn't normal for people to drink every day, then you start
yeah.
realizing, like, yeah, that there's a problem and whatnot. And
Yeah.
yeah, it was, once I started realizing that, I started to, I guess, rebel a little bit towards it and maybe speak my mind or lash out a little bit
hmm
towards him more often.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, when you grow up and especially when you live in the country, you're a little isolated. And when you don't, especially with a big family too, you don't spend a lot of time away from home other than school and you don't get to see other family dynamics. So you really have no idea, until you are in a situation where you're in someone's home and you're like, this is weird.
Exactly.
It
Yeah.
seems weird, right?
Yeah.
That's how I felt too. Yeah.
Yeah. And, and,
Yes.
and it's funny because we think it's weird for that family, but then you're reflecting, you're like, wait a second,
Yeah.
this is normal. This is what a family dynamic should look like.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
then, yeah, I guess you kind of get a little shy
Mm-hmm.
when that's
Yeah.
happening too. You get a little bit embarrassed about your family and
Yeah.
whatnot. And yeah, it's hard.
Yeah. What was your relationship like with your dad? Like what were the kind of dynamics in your family?
Actually, I had a decent relationship with my dad growing up, until I got to the older teenage years where again, where I started to rebel a little bit, seeing how it's affecting him. Um, Luckily, my dad wasn't physically abusive. I
Mm-hmm.
got my share of spankings and stuff like that
Yeah.
when I
Yeah.
was younger, but that was just how it was back then.
Yeah.
Um, but it was a good looking back. He taught me a lot. He gave me great work ethic. Um, I just unfortunately, like he was such a talented tradesperson that he just blew most of his talent
Mm.
through his, a lot of opportunities that he had in life that he could have gotten further into if it wasn't for his alcoholism, right? I
Yeah.
mean, he
Yeah.
worked on projects all over the world. He worked in Nepal. He worked in Indonesia, Russia. He worked on a whole bunch of hydro projects. Like he was a really great concrete carpenter, and and he was a good foreman, good leader. He just could have went even further with it if he didn't have you know,
Yeah. Yeah. I
those
mean, it
nemesis
sounds like
holding
he
him
was
back.
a more of a high functioning
Yeah,
substance abuser, right? Like
absolutely.
definitely
Yeah,
high functioning. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
And that presents a bigger dynamic in a family where you don't recognize it because it's not there's not abuse, there's not a lot of huge amount of trauma and chaos going on, so it is really not detectable for kids, and
yeah,
you really think that is very normal.
yeah,
So my dad also was super talented. I mean, he had barely any education, but he was an inventor and a creative mind and could just fix or build anything from with his hands without any, you know, he was a draftsman. And so, but with no schooling, he could draft a house from bottom up. So yeah, it's amazing. Super talented and sounds like a lot of the same kind of stuff.
yeah.
So tell me how you navigated that going into early adulthood.
Well, I didn't navigate it too well.
No.
To be honest with you. Like it spilled over into my personal life where, because you think this is the norm, and it wasn't just the alcohol, it was also the marijuana. And I know people don't think marijuana is a problem. It's illegal, that kind of stuff. But when you're doing it every day, 2, 3 times a day, I think that's a problem personally. But
Mm-hmm.
that's another subject, I guess. But as a group, and I thought that was the norm, I started to party. I started to, you know, drink a lot and drink more than just the weekends. It spills into 3 days, 4 days, 5 days a week. It becomes the norm after work. You have a couple beers, you smoke a joint, and you kind of go from there. And it wasn't until about, I would say, 28, 29, where it really started to, like, holy jeez, I gotta grow up here. Like this isn't the norm anymore. And so that's when I started to really make changes in my life, is my late 20s.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, good for you. Yeah, it is. I think as children of alcoholics, we sometimes fall into those same patterns because we don't recognize the underlying emotional and mental issues that are going on. And so that's just normal to us. And we also sometimes do it out of a rebellious kind of thing. And, I found that was my case. I did a lot of drinking and partying when I was in my early 20s. And yeah, I thought it was just, whatever. I don't have a problem. This is not such a big deal. But then all of a sudden you look at your life one day and you're like, yikes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I,
Exactly.
I
Yeah.
might not have to drink every day, but this is getting a little out of control with how I'm feeling. And you also, your body changes. And so you start to feel that
Yeah.
more, right?
And
Yeah.
and you look back too, like, you barely scraping by to make rent or my mortgage payment when I was younger, but I had enough money to buy booze and buy weed and all that kind of stuff, right? So, and if, you look back at that, and I mean, I know, we don't want to look back and dwell on it, but I look back and that, it's like, what if I just would have saved half of that
Yeah.
money and invested it, right?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. The financial part of it is
Oh
just
yeah.
blows my mind. Blows my mind.
Yeah.
Yeah. And somehow, it's hard. People say exactly like you said, you're trying to scrape by, yet you can seem to find money to go out and party and buy alcohol,
Yeah.
so, or whatever the case is. Yeah, it's crazy when you think about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it really spilled over to, like I've mentioned to you before, when I met my now ex-wife, we were in the party mode. I was working at a bar. She became a waitress. We met, we started getting together. We were in that party mode, and we just
Hmm.
never, like when the late 20s kind of happened, the early 30s, party mode kind of never left from her, or it
Hmm.
left for me. And then once that happens, there starts to get a little bit of division in your personal life and in your love life, right? And then, yeah, it was a key factor in my marriage breaking down for sure.
Yeah, there's a lot of dynamics there for sure when
Yeah,
you're in a relationship with someone, especially when you get into that, when you're both in the same mode and then one of you stops,
that's it.
right? And yeah, that's a tough situation to navigate. So what were some of the feelings that were coming up for you as far as like in your relationship? What are some of the dynamics that are a little tougher to navigate, just so people can relate?
In like in my past relationship,
Yeah, in the
well,
relationship where you found yourself, wanting to change.
it was for me, I think I had a low self-worth, right? And so for me, I always felt just I wasn't good enough. I wasn't
Hmm.
happy enough. I had so many different belief patterns and thought patterns about myself. Definitely money issues, right? Growing up with not much, not much education in the financial end of thing. They didn't teach us a lot of that stuff in school. My parents didn't teach us much, or didn't teach me much about, you know, not just saving but investing and whatnot. So those money paradigms were there. The feelings were just, I masked them. I think like in my early 20s, I masked my feelings. Like you kind of said, you just go out and, I can't afford it, but I'm going to go party anyways because at least I feel good at the moment.
Hmm.
So that dopamine fix. Um, as I started to become more aware of it becoming an issue, I definitely, I was living in that, I guess, comparative lifestyle. Like I would see other people that were same age as me, same,
Hmm.
graduated or whatnot. They're becoming more successful and they're doing better and greater things than me. And so that comparative lifestyle started to kick in, and then which hits you even worse with the self-worth. You know what I mean? What am I doing wrong?
Yeah.
I'm not good enough to do this, right? And so,
Yeah.
yeah, I guess, does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Just, some of the thought patterns that we go through. I mean, I know now you're a transformational coach, and that really plays into a lot of the programming and the paradigms that we come up against in our 20s when we come from a lifestyle like that. We just have a lot of your self-esteem, your self-worth. It just takes such a hit, and it becomes so hard to navigate not just romantic relationships, but also the other relationships around you. What was
Absolutely.
your relationship like with your parents at that point?
Pretty much non-existent.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was times where I would go, I would say there's probably a 20-year gap where I maybe talk to my parents 2 to 3 times a year,
Wow.
right?
Yeah.
And how do I explain this? I guess it's kind of like we're both, just that stubbornness of people like, well, they don't want to call me, I'm not calling them.
Hmm.
And I look back and I think, when I talked to my parents about this, and my mom, well, they thought the same thing. Well, if he doesn't want to call me, I won't call them. And that's just, I look at it, it's really genetical when it comes to your relationship with your kids, right?
Hmm.
And your parents. Like my dad, he was kicked out of his house when he was 15 years old. The relationship that my mom had with her parents were really good, but they didn't, like, there wasn't that feeling of love. Like, even though they loved each other, there wasn't that feeling of love.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? So, and then the relationship with my mom and her siblings weren't very, wasn't very good neither. And so when you grow up in that atmosphere, you think
Yeah.
that's the norm, right? Oh, this is how it's supposed to be, right?
Yeah.
Well, you don't think it. It subconsciously happens. This is what it's supposed to be. This is what a family dynamic is. Okay.
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
continue on
Well,
your life. So it's
there's no one there to point that out to you, right? Like
no one.
the
Yeah,
lack of communication, I think in the 70s and 80s for sure was just you just didn't talk about it. We didn't have social media. We didn't have um the the availability of resources like we do today. And so there's so many people, I think, in their 40s and 50s and 60s, even that are still trying to navigate that lack of communication, those feelings that because exactly that it's generational. You just adopt whatever it is you're in.
yeah,
And I had one of my guests say it's like a movie. It's like watching a movie for kids. You're just taking it all in and you're absorbing what's in the movie and then you're just repeating what you see because that's all you have to go on, right? Is
exactly.
that one movie playing over and over again.
Yeah, especially like me being, I'm not going to say isolated, but living out and not seeing how other families lived, and you figured this is life, and it gets ingrained into your subconscious mind that this is okay, this is what it's supposed to be like, right? So to break
Yeah,
those changes is it's hard, but that's what I'm
it's tough.
working on.
It's tough. Yeah. Yeah. What was kind of the catalyst for you wanting to get into? I mean, I know you have a background in construction business and that type of thing. So
Yeah.
you kind of dove into the business sector. But what was the catalyst for you wanting to um, kind of become a transformational coach? Like that's a really, it takes a lot of personal growth first to
Yeah.
be able to actually look at that type of profession. But what made you want to do that?
Whew. That's a bit of a story. So
Well, we got time.
we got time. Yeah, it goes back quite a few years when, when my ex and I were starting to, we're married, but we were really not married. There was no love, sleeping with our backs to each other, low self-worth on
Mhm.
my part. And I was really starting to not enjoy what I was doing anymore. I liked it. There was parts of it I liked, but there's parts of it I didn't like. And as I planted that seed in my mind of parts that I didn't like, it started to increase. And it came a time after the wife and I or the ex and I separated, then things started to really hit rock bottom for me. And even though I put on that smile, I was okay to everybody, inside I
Mhm.
was just, I was just eaten alive. I didn't like going to work. I would be waking up, um, and it started to reflect onto my kids, like this
Yeah.
attitude and that I had, and without me even knowing it, and I was even to a point at time, Krista, where I was had some suicidal tendencies. Like what's the point of being here anymore? What's the point of existence?
Hmm.
And the catalyst point to me is, like I said, it was spilling over so much into my kids that it happened to my daughter. Where she came, I had her, she was staying with me. She came to my room one day, I'm sleeping, knocks on the door, wakes me up. She's white as a ghost. And she says to me, she's like, Dad, I need help. I just swallowed some pills. She was on, she was
Mm.
suffering from depression, anxiety. So she was on some of those pills. And I took her off. So I took her to the ER. I was sitting there. I was just riddled with guilt and shame. And I knew I had to make a change. I knew I
Hmm.
had to do something different in my life. That's when I started to research personal development. That's when I started to fall into the personal development industry, taking some courses to improve myself, to find my purpose, to find what my
Hmm.
longings in life are. And sure enough, the coaching came in, you know, decided to leave. I decided to leave the company I was with, which, my business partner and I parted ways. I wish him all the best out there. The company's still succeeding, still doing well. Um, and I just dove into personal development. I knew I needed to change because I just couldn't let my kids live life without like how I was living, how I was feeling, no passion, no excitement, no love, no purpose in life. And that was the catalyst moment for me. And that's when I dove deep. Sometimes you see on those social media posts, hey, shut your phone off for 30 days and work out and do this and watch your transformation. I did that for 9 months. So
Wow. Wow.
yeah.
Yeah, That's powerful for sure. And I know there's so many people out there, and myself too, that was my own catalyst, was my kids too. When you're standing over your kids and yelling, and you're angry and you just don't understand why, but you see it in their faces or in their actions, and you're like, this is nuts. I need to get help, like I need
Yeah.
to change because I'm perpetuating this cycle. And I think that speaks volumes to so many people out there. And they feel stuck. They don't know which way to turn. But definitely moving towards uh, finding some peace for yourself, finding someone that can help you, a coach, a therapist, whatever that looks like. I think there's so many people out there struggling with it, and so afraid to speak up and
Yeah.
talk about it because there's a lot of shame, there's a lot of guilt, and you can, like in your situation too, you probably sat there and blamed yourself a lot, and
Oh,
then when you think,
constantly.
yeah, when you think back, you think, wow, I was just repeating these same cycles.
Yep.
And so it's so easy to feel guilty, and it's so hard to understand that it's just not right to place the guilt on anyone, but just to change it,
That's right.
Like you have to really find some forgiveness for yourself in that moment. And I think that's one of the toughest things for people is it's so hard to find that grace for
Yeah.
ourselves, right?
You just said it right there. I would say I had two or three really big transformational moments in my life, and one of them is when I was introduced to forgiveness and the practice of forgiveness.
Hmm.
And it's so powerful, and I like to use that analogy of practicing forgiveness is like, when you're mad at somebody, something you think somebody harmed you or whatever the case is, and you get that resentment in you and you want to just pick up a hot piece of coal and throw it at them so they burn, and you're so mad. But when you
Hmm.
pick up that hot coal, you're just burning yourself.
Hmm.
You're just burning your hand, right? And so it was one of my first coaches, and she said to me, "Just put down the coal, Pat. Just put
Yeah.
down the coal." And it just sunk in so deep. And then when I dove into the practice of forgiveness, and when I did the one program through the Brave Thinking Institute called the Dream Builder Program, they get into a really hard study of forgiveness. And to this day, I still practice forgiveness, and it's
Hmm.
such a great transformation for me.
It is. It's a powerful tool. It took me a long time to really understand what forgiveness meant to me. And I think that when you're a child and you go through trauma, whether it be small, little complex traumas over time or one big traumatic event, um, it's it seems really difficult and unreasonable to forgive the person that did that to you, or the people that perpetuated it. And when I look back at it, I think the forgiveness started with me about myself. It had to be about forgiving myself first and then learning and having a little bit of empathy and grace for the people that were going through their own situations at the time as well. So forgiveness is really a personal thing first. And it doesn't have to be about forgiving someone that traumatized you or wronged you in some way. There's a lot of cases of severe abuse where, you know, victims or they talk about forgiveness and that's difficult and they don't have to forgive that person necessarily. But the stuff that's eating them inside, like you say, the coal,
Yeah.
it's the stuff that's eating you inside that really takes a lot of work too and understanding to begin
Yeah.
that forgiveness process.
Exactly. And I like this. I like it's about forgiving the situation, not
Yeah.
forgiving the person itself, right? Because you hear a lot of people say, well, let's forgive and forget. You can never forget.
Yeah.
But the beautiful thing is we can constantly forgive. And when we constantly forgive the situation and ourselves, like you talked about, it's enlightening.
Hmm.
It raises our frequency, raises our vibration, and it's beautiful. It's like a
Yeah.
weight. It's like hiking a trail and you're carrying a 50-pound pack and you just lift it off at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
You feel so light.
I know. Imagine how much higher you could climb without that 50-pound pack.
That's right. Exactly. Or how much quicker. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about the dynamics with your kids. Like, what's your relationship like with you have two, right? Two
I have two
kids?
kids. I have
Yeah.
a 15-year-old son and a 17-year-old child that goes by they, them.
Okay.
So I have a child that is in the transgender phase of their life right now.
Mm-hmm.
And the dynamics is like, so, with being, co-parenting or whatnot,
Mm-hmm.
my daughter lived with me consistently for 2 years straight. And then she went to decide, when all this stuff happened with her, she decided to go live with her mom. And unfortunately, there was some abuse issues with her, not physical abuse or parental abuse, but some drug abuse there, some
Mm-hmm.
prescription drug abuse on her end. And she ended up having to go, her mom basically had to get her a court order to get police to pick her up and put her into a detox
Mm,
for 10 days. But it's changed her life. She's definitely off of all that stuff anymore.
good for
And
her.
what's really great about their life right now is because of the studies that I've been in and my personal development and my growth, my awareness of everything, it's starting to spill over onto them, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
now they're looking forward to life. They're looking forward to their next chapter, going to school. She's in grade 12 this year. She's looking forward to going to post-secondary school. She's looking forward to, you know, getting a job and, taking a gap year and exploring the future.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
she's off all her medications too. So
Wow.
that's
It's
just
tough having a kid navigate that. I mean,
well,
it is. I've been through that myself extensively
yeah,
with my son. And yeah, it is nothing I wish on any parent, that's for sure. And it is a tough road to navigate.
yeah,
And I I think that it wouldn't have been as I wouldn't have been as sound as I was if I didn't have some level of healing and transformation in under my belt to begin with, when we're in a place that we aren't able to navigate our own mental and emotional houses, it's so difficult to support our kids, right?
oh, absolutely.
And know what to do. So that's a tough gig
Yeah.
for
And then
sure.
with my son too, like, so my son, I can see some of the, how do I say it? Like some of his behaviors are not going down that path, but he's making some of those similar mistakes. So I find I'm a little bit more strict with him,
Mm,
right? And which in a sense may not be fair, but I don't want to make the same parental mistakes that I made with my
hmm.
older child, right?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
yeah, that's a challenge, right? So navigating that as well as, okay, I'm going through this and this happened with the older child and the younger child is
Hmm.
coming up and you're like, okay, and knowing that they're both different people, right? They're not the same people. They both make different decisions. We
Yeah.
can't control what they do, but we can just give them guidance the best that we can, right?
Yeah. So just touching on that, because I mean, communication for sure, and how you talk to kids and the kind of language that you use and just being open and honest with them about your feelings and the support level and all that kind of stuff. You work with kids, you work directly with young athletes, young kids who want to have healthier lifestyles and who are in sports and that type of thing. So talk a little bit about the communication aspects when you're dealing with adolescents and teenagers.
Oh, it's shit, Krista. Well, I find for me is I have to think, okay, what would I be thinking when I was a kid? What was I thinking when I was a kid, when I was an athlete as a kid? And what would help me out the most? And so I try to navigate the things that I went through as an athlete and help the kids in that sense. The tones are definitely, it's a different day and age from when I grew up. So, or when, we
Hmm.
grew up. So the tone is, just positive with these kids, just letting them know that there's a good future ahead and seeding them as much as I can with not just positivity, but, you know, getting them to set goals in their life, talking to them about routines and habits and how to create these and how to change, one habit at a time, right? Um, one of the athletes I'm working with, I work with him and I talk to him about, our long-term goal or our telescopic goal is what I like to say, what's your goal in 1 year? And then we work it down to microscopic goals. How do we get to that big goal that you want this year?
Mm-hmm.
And I help those kids just break it down into, day by day goals. What's one thing you can do to move
Yeah.
towards your goal today? Sound familiar?
Yeah.
Right.
Sure does.
Right. So basically the same stuff that I've learned in my transformational side,
Yeah.
I just changed the language a little bit, from
Yeah.
my transformational coaching to helping, adults get unstuck and live a more passionate life. I just changed the language and simplify the language for the kids, but it's
Mm-hmm.
basically the same material. It's just getting
Yeah.
them to understand that there is a good future. You can achieve what you want to achieve. You have
Yeah.
to
It
set
seems
it.
like it seems like such a different dynamic. I mean, you and I didn't grow up with that. I
No,
can't even imagine someone uh, like a fitness coach or something that I would have in my life. Even a coach in school. Your phys ed teachers or your coaches for because I played sports and junior high and stuff, and I can't imagine one of them coming up and say, "What are your long term goals? What is this and that?" Like
yeah,
that would have been foreign language to me. But kids are sponges, like they will soak this stuff up if given the opportunity to hear what you're saying and in a language that they understand and they can relate with.
yeah,
Because that's another thing too, is I think a lot of people find it hard to relate to teenagers. They don't understand their language. The world has changed so much. There's so many different facets that we sometimes get scared to approach or talk about things with them. And, can you give a couple of key ways that of communication that would help parents even navigate that with their kids?
listen to your kids.
Yeah.
Let them talk. Let them say whatever's on their mind. It might be the most ridiculous thing at times, but just let them talk. So we want to always have our kids listen to us. Like, so how many times have you said, "Hey, listen, I want you to listen, pay attention." Well, let's do that. The same for our children. Let's pay attention when they're talking. Let's let them have an open discussion and be comfortable to
Hmm.
talk to us.
Yeah, that's
Right?
powerful for sure.
I would
We
say that would be
forget they have a lot to say.
they have a lot to say. They have a lot of
Yeah.
worries out there. There's a lot of,
Yeah.
they worry so much about the circumstances, conditions that are happening around the world and trying to get them to, just focus on every day and, setting those goals and, you know,
Yeah.
let them become whatever they want. I ask kids all the time, "What's your goal? What do you want to be? What's your top 3 goals this year?" And
Hmm.
like you said, even today, kids are like, "I don't know, grade 12. I don't know what my goals are." Well, text me. What are they? You don't have to answer.
Hmm.
Let me know. I'm dealing with the local high school football team. And when I met, I'm the mental skills coach there. And I was just so blessed to be invited to join that great coaching staff. And I remember when I first started talking to these kids, you could see they're chatting, they're talking, they're not really paying attention. And I'd get their attention, round them up. And now when we gather them around and I'm talking, they're listening and they're engaged and they're asking questions. I got kids texting me 11 o'clock at night. "Coach, I
Oh,
have a
wow.
test tomorrow. I'm nervous. What can I do?" You know,
Yeah.
Nothing to do with football, right? It's got to do
Yeah.
with life. And it's just, to me, that's my purpose.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
know I'm living into my purpose when I have these people reaching out. So
Yeah. And that's beautiful because I think no matter what, kids always need one safe person to go to, at least just
yes.
one person in their life that they know they can call up or text or whatever. Not call nowadays, let's be real. No kids call.
You know,
But they can text you or they can reach out and say, "Hey, I got this going on." Because even though you're just discussing the sports or the kind of everyday life, when something traumatic does happen, if there is a situation going on in their family, they feel like they can't talk to anybody, or there is alcoholism or some sort of addiction or abuse going on, that one person that's out there for them that they trust and that's the little seeds, planting that trust. And the day that they come and say, hey, I got a problem, that's their safe space, right?
Yeah,
And that's so
exactly.
powerful for
It's
kids.
super powerful, and it's power not just for the kids, but how much I learn. And like
Yeah.
I said, it's it just fills my heart when they're coming to me and I'm able to make an impact on these kids. And it's just like you say, it's the smallest little things. How I'm
Hmm.
nervous about a test. I had one of my athletes say, I asked him, what are your wins for the week? Because he's like, I don't feel like I'm playing good. I'm not playing good. I'm not doing this. And well, what are some of the wins? What are some of the good things he did? What are some of the successes? And he texts me. And, he's like, oh, thanks, coach. I feel better now. Goes on and has a great game. Right. And
Hmm.
so, yeah, and this as well. Like, we've been in these studies, too often do we just beat ourselves up over
Yeah.
really minor issues.
Yeah.
Right.
I
And,
know. It's like we're programmed to do that,
exactly.
It's like it's the fork in the road. The easiest way is to beat ourselves up, and it seems so backwards. The easiest way should be to be like, give ourselves a little pat on the back and
Yeah.
say, oh, okay, well, this might be going wrong today, but look what I did over here, and that's just not the norm. It's not the norm for kids, but it's not the norm for adults for sure.
No.
And that's just changing those patterns and changing that communication, that thought process needs to happen across the board, you
Yeah.
know? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And one of my goals is as transformational coaches, not only do I want to help the kids, but the best way to help the kids is by helping the parents. Right. And
Hmm.
so if you look at, the whole self-development industry, I don't know the stats. I'm not going to say a stat, but you see people typically it's in their 40s and 50s that are getting into the personal development. My
Hmm.
whole goal is I want to bring that to a younger age. I want to bring that to younger parents, maybe to mid 30s, maybe to the, when they're starting to have kids or their kids are at a younger age where it's, you know, I'm not going to say the term not too late because it's never too late, but,
Right.
where they can start making a better impact on their children when they're 5, 6, 7, 8 years
Yeah.
old. Right.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. It's so important. And changing kids' lives like you're doing and paying attention to what they're doing at that age will have a ripple effect in their life, So when
Yeah.
those kids start thinking about getting into relationships, they have some tools in their toolbox. They're not going in empty handed like I felt like, or like you must have felt like, when you come from whatever's going on in their family dynamic, they're carrying that into their relationships when they're older,
Yeah.
and having that transformational piece at such a young age, whether it be in the sports or their everyday life, is so crucial to changing those generational, like breaking those generational chains. And it could just be your mental and emotional paradigms and conditions, right? So,
Exactly. Yeah.
so crucial to change that. Yeah. Yeah. It's fantastic. So, what else have you got going on right now?
Ooh, I got some exciting stuff coming up, actually,
Okay.
Krista. Thank you for asking. I was selected to be an author
Mm.
on a book series called Triumphant, and I'm meeting with the fellow next week, and it'll be their second book series, and so there's 12 chapters. Each author gets a chapter, and we get to tell our story and know how it's changed their life and molded us into the life that we are. So I got that coming up. Super excited there.
Mm-hmm.
I have I'm going to be on another. It's not really a podcast, but it's more of a online TV series,
Okay.
and that's coming up at the end of November for me. I'm excited for that one. This lady out of New York runs it, and so
Yeah. What's the series called?
I can send it to you.
Yeah, send it to
Yeah,
me and I'll put it in the show notes just so
yeah,
people know where they
yeah,
can see you.
yeah. And
Yeah,
yeah, she has a massive following, so I'm pretty excited about that. And
yeah.
and
Awesome.
honestly, just the exciting things is just every day, just getting up and
Yeah.
working towards my goals, working towards my dreams and a life that I love. And
Yeah.
I'm so blessed to have this ability to teach people
Hmm.
and guide people to live their best life.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, that's exciting news all the time. Those are the
Yeah.
things I got coming up all the time.
That is exciting news. It's
Yeah,
awesome. When you love what you do and when you feel your soul purpose being answered every day and the work that you do, it's so gratifying. And if anyone out there is thinking about that they are ready to go through a transformation or they're ready to make changes, it doesn't have to be huge. It can be just little steps, you know?
that's right.
I encourage them to reach out to yourself or a coach that can help just guide you towards that, because you're right, it's never too late. I got into this game a little later in life. You know, I stayed stuck in my conditions for quite some time, but it is never too late to reach out and do what you want to do. And at first, you know, I didn't think I had big dreams. You know, I thought, oh, I'm just comfortable. We live in that state of comfort. But when you start exploring your capabilities and all the possibilities and what you really love and want to do in your life, it is amazing what comes up. You know, it's
Oh, yeah.
amazing what's been shoved down and stuffed down for so long that if given the opportunity and given the light to see, it's incredible what can come up for you. And so I encourage people to, if they're thinking about it or ready to make a little move, reach out for sure, because it is
100%.
empowering to
There's a
live
coach
this
out
way.
there for everybody. Like I
That's
have a
right.
coach. I
Yep,
have a
me
coach.
too.
I have a personal trainer. I
Yeah,
have, I'm a personal trainer, but I still have my own personal trainer, and the reason I
yeah,
have those is because they motivate me. They see my blind spots, right? Because we can't see
yeah,
our own blind spots. So
that's right.
that's the great thing about having a coach, someone that can guide you through that and see your blind spots that you're having in yourself, your limiting beliefs, right?
Yeah,
And help people through that. And that's what I love
yeah,
doing.
yeah, yeah. It's definitely not linear. We all still have our own stuff, and it will continue. It's just how you deal with it, right? It's how
It's
you
how we
handle it
perceive
on
it.
a, that's right, and how you move forward. So, well, I want to ask you just one last question before we wrap up. If you could tell yourself if you could tell your 20 something self, early 20, what kind of advice would you give that guy?
Lots of advice. Wow. I would say get some personal development.
Yeah.
Find out if I could go back in time, I would definitely look for a coach, look for some kind of personal development that was out there, because there was lots out there at that time. It just wasn't as significant as a business as it is now. I would tell them to keep their head up. You're worth it. Keep moving forward. Basically,
Mhm.
it's very simple.
Yeah.
Like you're worth it is probably the best
Yeah.
advice I could tell myself is you're worth it.
Yeah. That's amazing. Thank you so much, Patrick. I am thrilled that I had a chance to sit down and chat with you. And I know you got a lot going on, so I will post all of that in the show notes so people
Appreciate
can reach out and they can start following you on your socials and all that stuff, because you've got some amazing things happening. So
Thank you.
I
As do you.
appreciate, thank you,
Yeah.
thank you. And I appreciate you. So thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you, Chris. I appreciate it.
Thank you for joining me today on another episode of Becoming Sound. If this episode resonated with you in some way, please share it with someone you care about. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button. It helps to get this information out to more people who may need it. If you have a sec, I would love a follow on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. While you're there, hit the 5-star rating and give me a review. When you're scrolling, follow me on my social platforms, and I would love to hear your comments and feedback. Have a fabulous day. Lots of love and gratitude from me. Please note, the views, information, and opinions expressed during the Becoming Sound podcast series are solely those of the individuals involved. The content of this podcast is to educate, inform, and for entertainment purposes only. This podcast series and the content presented does not constitute for medical or other professional advice or services. If you are in crisis or in need of help, please contact your medical or professional provider.